This is McCook to Mr. Bill. It's an honor to have you here. The downsides of owning a tent. Here's a tent. My daughter bought this 20 years ago. It's a 10 by 9 tent. She bought it so that she could go and then have a place to just set off to the side at one of those concerts. It was a country western jamboree type concert. And the next field over, you could rent a spot to put your tent. And so that's why she wanted the tent. And she used it for the 2 days that that concert was going on. And it was nice. But she's never used it since. It's set in my basement for the next 20 years. Yeah. Having a tent, the downside is, are you ever going to use it? Yes, my daughter spent $150 on a tent and used it one time. It's been in my basement ever since. New in the bag, never used. With that in mind, that's not the only downside of having a tent, is not using it. A friend of mine, about 5 years after we got married, he got married, and he and his new wife decided they were going to do some tent, camping, and fine. Bought a tent for $150, and they bought a Coleman lantern, gas lantern. About a $50 bill for that. So they went out here to Trenton Lake, set up, and about 100 yards down there was another camper set up, camper in the back of a pickup. No, that family was milling around there. And so once they got their tent set up though, they said that put the lantern in the tent, and they just walked down to the lake. Said they were back within 30 minutes, no more than 45 minutes, and they could see their tent at the far distance at different angles they could. And with that in mind, even though it was probably most of a half a mile away as they'd walked different directions on the lake, but when they got back, that camper pickup was gone. Okay, they walked up to their tent and their Coleman, brand new Coleman lantern was gone. It had been stolen. Yeah, and that just made them so devastated that you couldn't protect your stuff and you're not safe out there at the lake, that they just took their tent, went back home. Next yard sale, they put that tent on the yard sale, and they never went tent camping again. Never went again. My longtime neighbor, 12 years he lived next to us. He was a mountain man, had been more or less retired, but he'd been 12 years, he was a hunting guide up in Wyoming, big game hunting guide. So when he got back here, he still liked to hunt deer a little bit, though his health was failing. And he decided he wanted, 1 or 2 more years of tent like he did up in the mountains. So he bought a Cabela's tent, and it looked more like a teepee than a tent. It was a canvas tent, $500 it cost him. He decided to set it up in the backyard, practice getting it up and down. So he set it up in the backyard and he just left it there. And that evening, he was going to put it down next day. And so he got up next morning, and next thing I know, I got somebody pounding on my door. And he was at the door and he said, "Did you see anything or hear anything last night?" I said, "No." He said, "Somebody stole his tent." So went out, and of course it was gone. It was gone. Tracks showed that it went and got over the fence and into the cemetery and out that way. And of course, law enforcement did him no good to try to find it. It was never found. But it devastated him, that mindset. And so from then on, he bought another tent, but he bought one that went inside his pickup. And so with that, he still did some, but to put up a tent anywhere makes you a target in so many ways, so many ways. And to even put up a tent in your yard is not the safest thing in the world. A few towns over, they set up a little kid's tent, and the little girl went in there in the backyard into her tent, and there was a rattler had crawled in there, and she didn't see him in time, was bitten. Most of $100,000 it cost to save that little girl's life. $100,000. Yeah. With that, though, it doesn't end. I heard on radio that a young couple with children had went out to the national parks in Colorado and put their tent up under a tree, a living tree, but for whatever reason, one of the large branches broke off and pinned them in that tent. It killed the woman, and the man was pinned so badly he could not get out. So the children had to work their way out, little children, and go for help, and go for help. Yeah. A tent, there are some downsides to it without question. I know a lot of people that do it and enjoy it, but just remember the dangers, because it can come from you in numerous ways. You guys have a good day.